Welcome aboard to podcast number 7 in the series of the Voyage to Back Yonder. This will be the last episode of talking about my 9-week journey from being notified by the Whispers of Love that I would be moving to northern Idaho. We left off in the saga of transition where the apartment complex I was planning on moving to the next week was not answering their phone. Their voicemail was full where you couldn't leave a message. And when I had sent my cashier's check to reserve the apartment, they weren't there to receive it, so it was back at the post office, sitting. They were also supposed to have mailed me my lease by email, and that hadn't happened for several days either. So it seemed that the Ironwood message about the Tree of Life that I talked about in the previous episode was received. It evidently had done its job and was no longer needed. Of course, after all that I had been through in the previous 8 weeks before this happened, allowed me not to be as frazzled as I would have been before all those other experiences I've talked about. So I started searching for a new apartment to move into the next Monday. Every apartment I called in Coeur d'Alene didn't have anything available until June, more than a month later than I needed. And the very last apartment complex on my list informed me that they didn't have any open units, but their sister complex in Post Falls might have something. Now, Post Falls is just west of Coeur d'Alene, about 10 minutes or so. So that would also work. So I took another deep breath and I called them, and they answered right away. That was a good sign. And they actually had an apartment available, the very last one. They were also a fairly new apartment complex, and this one apartment had never been lived in yet. The Italian name of the apartment complex translates beautiful sky. And the application and signing process was fast, and I was notified the very next day that I was approved, and we made an appointment to move in on Monday. So, woo, shoo. And when I received my lease to sign online, I noticed, the apartment number. And I, of course, immediately accessed Google to learn what that message was waiting for me within those numbers, because this was such a drastic, obvious event that was happening in this journey. And the apartment number was 229. And the number 2, it resonates with faith and trust. Also partners and relationships, balance and harmony, insight and intuition. And also serving your divine life purpose. With the number 2 appearing twice, it actually amplifies those influences and also the vibrations of the number 9 that follows the 229. And the number 9 relates to universal spiritual laws, a higher perspective, an expansive viewpoint, and doing light work. Also denotes endings and conclusions. There's so much information, when it comes to numerology. So I'll spare you most of it for now. But there were so many items that were reinforcing the same message about trust. And one piece that jumped out at me was that the number combination of 229 also suggests that if I have lost something as of late, that the universe will manifest something positive and better to take its place. Like maybe a new apartment because the old one fell through. And it also mentions, to trust that a wonderful new beginning and or direction will come from it. And it turned out that this new apartment was a much better apartment than the other one, and one even better than I would have picked for myself. And the number 229 can also indicate that if you are inclined to pursue a spiritually based practice, career, and or profession, or service-based venture, now is the most auspicious time to look to what interests you most and pursue avenues that will aid you to fulfill those aspirations. It's time to accept and develop your spiritual gifts and use them to benefit yourself and others in a light working capacity. And that pretty much, if you know me, that sums up what I imagined this next year of integrating unconditional love more into my life would involve. And all the mention of the light working, I was curious, what would that look like? What's that going to look like? What would I experience when I reached northern Idaho? So I was urged to pull a card from my Zen deck. And the card I pulled was integration. And of course it would be that card. It's what I was told this whole next year would be for me. A deeper integration for what I have awakened to. Unconditional love for myself. Unconditional love for others. Seeing the higher being in others. Seeing higher beings from the other side. And then communicating, higher being to higher being, understand when and how each individual wants to wake up, and if I have a role to play in their awakening. So my last Sunday in Colorado, I had pulled a card for my weekly Sunday blog post. And it was a card called the Eagle. And the message of the card was that the eagle comes from the east, the place of the rising sun of new beginnings. So, of course, I was coming from Colorado, east of Idaho. And the message of the card is, do I want to live in a chicken coop, sheltered from life, counting the regular feedings? Or do I want to soar like an eagle? The eagle calls you to ascend, to acquire perspective, so you can fly wing to wing with great spirit. No more excuses. The time is now to fly to your chosen purpose. If you postpone it, you'll be betraying yourself. Free yourself and live your highest destiny. Fly! And I was like, wow. Okay. No doubt I'm headed to a new beginning, and I'll ignite some new adventures into unconditional love. And I've shared all these messages over these past episodes so that you can see that there are messages waiting for you everywhere for your own life. Do you see how these messages are everywhere? When we shut up and listen and pay attention, we can see messages that have been placed all around us. And it starts to become like an egg hunt where there are pieces placed throughout our lives. And when we embrace our lives, like a deep breath into our being, certain things start to stick out from the rest. And then, when you gather all these things together, you suddenly see how, all those individual letters you found create a word. And then you start to see that all those words that were formed create a sentence. And then all those sentences joined together become a detailed message for you. Another example of this happening to me outside of, cards and numbers standing out were in the goodbye gifts that were being given to me during this 9-week period. And first, I was given a purple amethyst crystal mala prayer bead bracelet. And then I went to visit a friend of mine in Florissant, Colorado, and while we were there, we visited a rock shop. The owner of the store picked up a small rock out of a box full of purple accented stones, and right there in her hand, I saw a little heart on the stone. I asked if I could see it, and sure enough, there was a little tiny purple heart on the stone. Sold! And there was also this purple amethyst type cut crystal that called out to me. A few weeks later after that, when I was having another goodbye meal, a brunch, another friend gave me a heart-shaped stone that was a purple hue. And then lastly, I was meeting some friends that came into town for goodbye lunch, and she brought me a present. Now, she makes these beautiful blankets, and she shared that while she was contemplating which blanket she was going to give me, she suddenly changed her mind at the last minute and decided to make me something. So I unwrapped the little box and opened it up and unraveled the tissue paper, and lo and behold, it was this little tree made from silver wire with purple amethyst stones as leaves. The tree of life again. So evidently I was getting a message about the color of purple and purple stones. So, of course, I researched it. And when I looked into it, it turned out that purple amethyst is my birthstone. So even though I'm over 50 years old, for some reason, I never realized that. Purple is also the color of the crown chakra, the chakra that connects us to the heavens. And each internet search provided me more clarity on what these purple items were trying to tell me. Purple is the color of people seeking, spatial fulfillment outside of this kind of realm, peace of mind, meditation, magic, mystery. It said that purple amethyst can aid in healing physical ailments, emotional issues, energy healing, and chakra balancing. Amethyst crystal therapies, they're primarily associated with physical ailments of the nervous system, the curing of nightmares and insomnia, and balancing the crown chakra. And all of this was a confirmation of what I had been focusing on for over a decade, if not my entire life. And this showed me that it is not by coincidence that all this was happening in my life and the things I searched after in my life. It was like a nod from the creator of the universe that it wasn't by accident. And now I have all these purple amethyst items and stones all gathered together on my altar, next to my purple amethyst crystal ball that I had obtained years before. And the Thursday night before I was packing up my truck to move out of my condo and leave the state, my realtor stopped by to finalize all the paperwork and to obtain the keys for the lockbox. And she asked me, if there was anything else that I needed. And I answered, yes. Could you please have my condo sold before I reach northern Idaho? And I said it jokingly. And she replied she would see what she could do, but something inside me believed it was going to happen. So I packed up on Friday, stayed at a friend's house that night, and headed out of town Saturday morning, which was April 28th of 2018. And as I'm pulling away from the house to leave, I look down and my clock is 4:32 a.m. And I thought, what am I counting down to? 4, 3, 2. And I journeyed through Denver and north out of town. And as I reached the Colorado border, just before I passed, I received my first text message from my realtor. I got my first offer for $5,000 more than my asking price. And she hadn't even posted the pictures yet. And by the end of the day, I had a handful of more offers. And by the time I reached my brother's house in northern Idaho late Sunday afternoon, I had a total of 6 offers. It happened. My condo had an offer before I left the Colorado state line. Crazy. The inspection went fine, and I ended up making some concessions, but it still ended up selling the condo for $4,000 more than I was asking. And the closing transaction happened on 5/24 of 2018. So 88 days after I had been notified I was moving on February 26 of 2018. I found it interesting that the number 88, well, you know I researched it, that the number 88 is associated with material abundance and prosperity. And the angel number 88 is also a highly spiritual number that suggests that you are on the cusp of a prosperous and abundant spiritual life. So all the numbers that jump out to us have some meaning. There are messages hidden everywhere for us. Everywhere, I say. There were so many more experiences I had during those 9 weeks, but these were the ones that I was prompted by the whispers of love to share with you. It was a life-altering move. It was a transition out of a physical state to another one, but it also was a spiritual transition from one state of being to another. Do I trust you, Creator of all things? Why, yes, I do. Do I love you, Mother and Father of all things? I absolutely do. Next episode, we'll board the ship and take a look around before we head off into the ocean. So until that next episode, stop and take a look around you. What colors are you seeing that you collect unknowingly? What numbers are jumping out at you? What do they mean for you? What message are they trying to tell you? Google it and find out. What is the destination you have burning in your heart? What is keeping you from seeking it? What are you fearing? Take a deep breath and write it down. What is one small thing that you could do right now? One tiny step toward that. Do it right now. I said do it. Enjoy your voyage. I love you.